many people asked us, said they could not be here today for one reason or another, so they asked us to provide a summary, and so that they can get that summary firsthand, we have a sophisticated video recording system here. So, I'm Marcia Smelkinson. I call myself the mouthpiece of this campaign. I think I know most of you, and many of you I met at the last meeting that we had at the JCC in February. Let me tell you first our goals for the meeting today. I think you all have an agenda. Our goal is that you will leave with an understanding of where we are in relationship to the controversy that is surrounding Baltimore Clayworks, and how this campaign, you and we, can move forward, take next steps. To get to that understanding, we're going to go over what has happened since we last were together. And we're going to go over the financial situation as we understand it. We've tried very hard to collect information and get clarity so that we can share that information with you. And we will do that. We want to go through questions and answers to get your feedback, your understanding of the situation and how we can move forward, and your feedback on what we've presented on your behalf. Obviously is an informal structure of the community. We aren't a bunch of voting members or whatnot, but we've evolved into this sort of ad hoc steering committee of people who have been working basically every day since February 3rd on these issues. And well, thank you. All right, let me make a few introductions, and then we'll get started. This is Pat Halley, and this is Rima Saman, and there is Ann Geddes. They are, with me, members of this ad hoc steering committee who have turned their lives over to this, this issue. And others who have worked with us who are not here today include Deb Bedwell and Cynthia Kamen and Ronnie Aronin, and many we've consulted with, and Susan Patz, who's out of town this weekend, as well as many others, many of you in this room who we've talked to over the course of the last few weeks. And I want to tell everybody how much we appreciate your candor and your interest and your care about Baltimore Clayworks. It's what fuels us, and that's what we're all about. Also here today is a member of our Board of Trustees. This is Susan Vernon, and Susan has long been a member of our community and has welcomed us into her home to discuss many of the issues that are facing us, and we hope that she, along with all of us, may learn something today about where we're feeling and where we're going, and share that with her fellow trustees. Okay? We also have engaged with members of the Mount Washington Improvement Association. Are there any of those folks here today? Okay. I just wondered if there was a representative, but they are in contact with us and have had input and expressed their support. In the interest of saving time, I'm not going to ask that we go around the room and everybody introduce themselves. I just would like to ask you to, little show of hands, raise your hand if you are or have been a student at Baltimore Clayworks. Yeah, that's pretty impressive. Okay, how about who has been on the Board of Trustees? There we go, Marlene and Susan, Laura. Okay, how about, how many of you have been a donor?
What'd you ask?
A donor.
Oh, define
That's that you've made a donation, independent, or you, actually, if you've been a member, you have been a donor, so. Well, let's do that again. Raise your hands. Okay, great. And how many of you have purchased materials at Baltimore Clayworks or at a ticketed event or gone to a ticketed event? Great. And how about teachers, instructors, artists, resident artists, associate artists, etc.? Quite a few of you here. And thank you. Thank everybody. This is a pretty good reflection of the petition signers on March 16th when we presented the petition and the signers to the board. At that point, we had 743 signers. I think some of you were at the JCC meeting when you said, do you think we can get 300? And we had 300 within, I think it was 52 hours or something. So we had 743. We now have 765 signers. 320 of them said they were students. 154 said they were donors. 350 said they had purchased at Baltimore Clayworks. 111 said they were Mount Washington residents or business owners. 165 said they had attended ticketed events. 48 were teachers or instructors. 90 were participants in community arts programs, and 77 were resident artists, springboard. There were lots of people who were artists but had not had what would we call it, a titled role in Clayworks. Okay, so what has happened since we last met? Well, we created the petition and circulated it. We didn't stand in front of the giant food collecting signatures. We shared it with our classmates and our friends and our neighbors and our family, anybody that we think might have been affected by Clayworks. And I'm overwhelmed by the numbers that have turned up. Since 765 is an astounding total, and I just salute everybody who signed and everybody who shared that petition. But it really does reflect something important. And for those of you who aren't aware, on the website that we created with the petition, we published the names of those signers. I have the copy of the petition and a copy of the list here, but you can see it at any time on the website. We've engaged in several meetings with members of the board, including several of us met with Susan and Nancy Nesrella at Susan's home, and with the acting executive director in an attempt to gain more information and more clarity about the issues involved. We've made an effort to assemble and document records of actions by the executive director, by the board of trustees that have contributed to, or that have preceded reaching this crisis stage. We thought it's important to have a record that we can look at to try and see what to avoid in the future. We've conversed with members of the Mount Washington community, as I mentioned. We've initiated planning of fundraising and development efforts. We told you a little bit about our peer-to-peer and crowd funding program that we hope to implement. And we told you about that in February, and also since then we've reached out to some major donors who have stepped up and indicated six-figure contributions that could be available to help rescue and restore Baltimore Clayworks.
Six-figure?
Six-figure, yeah. You know, we've also made it clear to the board and the acting AD that these pledges are conditional upon, conditional on a halt of the sales activity. Um, Pardon me?
A delay.
A delay. We'll get to that in a little bit more detail as we move on. But my point is that the funds raised are not available for immediate transfer to Baltimore Clayworks because that issue is still not resolved, okay? And that's also why we, at your suggestion, why we have not begun the individual fundraising effort. We presented the petition, which we think verified the strength of our position and the size of the community's passion about the well-being of Baltimore Clayworks. And we presented our case and these findings at the official board meeting it was on March 16th. We also left a document because there was not time to discuss it and get answers at that on that night, requesting clarification of certain decisions and commitments that have been made on behalf of Baltimore Clayworks, Inc. And about a week later, we now have a written document in reply to most of those questions. At the open session meeting with the board, members of the Board of Trustees informed us that the action of putting the buildings on the market for sale was a condition that they agreed to in exchange for an emergency line of credit loan. There still are some confusing pieces or absent pieces of information about that, but they were very firm that they took a vote when it was unanimous at the time with one abstention to accept the terms of that loan, and a condition was that they put the buildings on the market for sale. That's both buildings, the properties, correct. They maintained that there were no other options for the emergency funding needed at that time, that they had exhausted all the avenues of borrowing, including personal loans and donations made, and that without the emergency loan, everything was in danger. There was a point very soon thereafter, perhaps the next day, at which loan service payments were due and payroll was due, and this is what they've told us, there was no cash available to make those payments. So they exercised their fiduciary responsibility of trying to keep things alive and pay the bills and pay the payroll, and agreed to the terms of the emergency loan. And I really hope, as I said at our last meeting, and let's try to hold to it today, that we don't spend a lot of time revisiting what got us to that point. I think we all know that communication breakdowns had occurred, that there wasn't a lot of dialogue to share information. I think that there's no doubt in my mind that these people who are like us, they're among us. They are. Their motivations are to do what's best for Baltimore Clayworks, and they were faced with a a critical decision and therefore made that decision as they apparently unanimously agreed to do. About the sale, both Kathy Holt, who is president of the board, and Mary Blair, who is now acting director, have said in public meetings that, or they did say in public meetings, both on February 8th, the one that we had at Clayworks, and in other public meetings, that the buildings would be listed unpriced as a means of identifying what the value was to the marketplace. In fact, at this point, the listing is published and it shows an asking price of $4.5 million. So some decision was made not to list it unpriced. Our board has informed us that they have received offers, not of $4.5 million, and they have not accepted any of the offers, but they have received them and must consider them, are in the process of considering them. We understand that the books and the accounting and loan documents, other documents which have not been publicly available, have been shared with an attorney named Irving Walker, who was brought to the board by our friend Marcy Emmer, who is a student and with us here today. Although the documents and the details remain confidential, we are told that Mr. Walker advised the board to work with us and that the time to act is now. I must share with you that original statements by the board leadership stated that he had, quote, confirmed that it was time to sell the buildings. They have since, actually yesterday, told us that they had misspoken, that he did not confirm that at all, simply that the time to act was now. We don't know who else they misspoke to about Mr. Walker's advice, but it really turned our heads to learn this. Okay, so let's take a look at the financial situation as we understand it. I'm going to ask Rima Saman to talk about that. She is an active student at Baltimore Clayworks. I think many of you have been her classmate and are her friends. She has lived in Baltimore for 12 years and had a career in international and investment banking, commercial banking, and is quite knowledgeable and quite helpful to all of us in understanding the financial issues here. She also has had extensive conversations with Kathleen Basham, who is the treasurer of the board, and with Mary Blair, the acting executive director. And it's based on the information that she's received that she's given us advice, and will share her thoughts and her vision, her view of what the picture is with you now.
Hey, thank you, Masha. So I attended the first community meeting in August of 2016, and then attend further meetings. At that meeting, we were told that Clayworks was not in a healthy financial situation, and somebody who turned out to be Mary Blair from the back shouted, "We have $600,000 of debt." Not knowing anything about the financials of Clayworks and how the whole situation came about, just that it was a community meeting that was organized at our request, if I'm not mistaken, at the request of the community.
Several people here.
I said, from my background as a banker, a debt is a debt. It's not a bad word. It's really not a death sentence the way I perceive that emotional. We have $600,000 of debt. So I thought maybe we should look at the financials and maybe see whether we have a current debt, a long-term debt, whether the terms can be changed, maybe we can change banks. At the time, it was big deal, 600,000. Later on, with the various discussions we've had with the individual board members, including Susan here, we have learned that in addition to the long-term debt, which is estimated at $620,000, there are two lines of credit. One for 150, and the last 50,000 that was granted in
December or January.
December, that absolutely must be repaid by December 2017. No mention today is, nothing talks about the repayment of the long-term debt, but we understand, again, we have not had any confirmation, neither of the terms of the debt. We only know that there's a lien on the two properties and that it will probably mature sometime in April of next year. So in 1 year, there's the repayment of $620,000 that looms over the head of the board members. So there are other creditors lined up, including loans from board members, restructured fund loans that are, or gifts that we understand have not been used for the purposes they were given because of the shortage of cash. And this, the board is slightly uncomfortable with because from their point of view, this needs to be addressed very quickly. Their creditors, be it BG&E, other suppliers, there's a debt of $80,000. There's a limit of $17,000 on the credit card of Clayworks. To make a long story short, Clayworks is in debt for $1,050,000. Some of these debts, of course, are loan interest-free. So as far as we are concerned here, we try to look at the debt in terms of emergency. What needs to be paid immediately to give the board some breathing space, working with us, with a unified voice, and we've invited board members to join us today, and thank you, Susan, for showing up. Because we thought we could learn from questions that could be put to the board, and they can hear us talking in general in front of everybody. So in our effort to assist the board, we started saying we have this ability to raise money, and we can do that. And some of us have that kind of financial muscle through their connections, through family members. And already we were given pledges, as Marsha mentioned, in the six-figure, conditional, of course, upon some agreement that we can reach with the board so that we can speak with one voice. Because one, we do not represent anybody other than passionate people. Two, what we're trying to do is assist the board. Three, we have that kind of ability to show the money. The board is, first of all, we do not still, until today, I personally do not have any details of the terms of the loans. But as far as I'm concerned, it's irrelevant. There's a crisis. We know that there's 200,000 plus of lines of credit that need to be repaid immediately to give some breathing space for Clayworks to be able to pay staff, supplies, repay some of the immediate debt that could cause us to have some kind of legal proceedings brought forward against us as a community, as an institution, sorry. So, if we assume that we can raise somewhere in the region of $150,000 to $200,000, we have asked the board to arrange a meeting with the bank so that we can go and explain to them where we are coming from, what we would like to do, and probably even divulge some names of potential donors so that they understand that we're not just making a story. And maybe they can accept, one, no more pressure on the board. Two, they will look at us more favorably. As a banker, I always liked a bad client to come forward and tell me I'm working on it and this is what I'm doing. It may not lead anywhere in the immediate, at that particular moment, but I know that my client is not just spending his money doing something else. And today, we need to kind of let the bank know that there is another voice who's willing to put money on the table. The board is adamant that they must sell. They have no other option to raise money. I would like to mention here that Mary Blair has a 35-year career in fundraising. I'm flabbergasted at the fact that somebody with such a successful career, one, didn't plan. Two, I don't want to point finger at anybody, but that's my personal judgment. When she told me she has a career in fundraising, I Googled her, and her CV is pretty impressive. She's worked for the LSE in London. She's worked for Hopkins. She has her own firm. And I'm just thinking, what is the board doing? Sleeping on information that is given to them. There are no checks and balances, as we heard. There has been miscommunication. There has been opacity in the information that was provided to the board members. However, as part of their fiduciary responsibility, I would have expected that the board doesn't take the word of just one person. Suppliers, committees, finance committee. Where was the finance committee? Not looking at numbers and thinking, oh, we have a crisis looming. So today, we have gone further than our initial offer to stop the sale. And we went yesterday or the day before in an email. We have put forward a suggestion to the board. I'm not sure I'm talking about this.
I can or you can,
Okay.
however you go ahead. Keep going.
So we told the board, we understand that you have really no option, and you haven't kind of given us an indication of your ability to raise money immediately. So we're going to go ahead with you and say, leave that property on the market, both properties on the market. However, we have a few requests against this, or I can't say conditions, but some requests that we would like you to meet. One is that you accept a few of us, certainly a number of us people who have been working on trying to save Clayworks, to invite them to the board. Two, that you do not accept any offer on the sale unless, once we're on the board, we get consulted. And we ask you, because the board asks for a majority, 50% plus one, to make such decisions. And we're saying, when it comes to the sale of buildings worth $4.5 million, we need more than 50%. I'm still thinking, as a British citizen, of the Brexit referendum that called for a simple majority, and we know where we are now in England. So, we also told the board that we would share in every fiduciary responsibility with them.
Excuse me, so the 2/3 was, you didn't specify.
Oh, sorry, I said that as we would all be on the board, speaking together, planning together, the sale of the buildings would need to be approved by 2/3 of the board. So far, the answer, without dwelling on the details of exchange of emails, the answer has been, we cannot accept this. So, in addition to the board asking for, what is our vision for Clayworks? Detail your vision of where you see Clayworks going. And I'm saying, what is your vision? You're selling an asset, maybe ultimately Clayworks doesn't need to have assets. Maybe we should be tenants somewhere. Maybe ultimately, when the situation is slightly different, we can think of selling the buildings. But again, this is not the case today. So we're saying, give us the time, work with us, let us participate in the decision making, and then we can show you in a period of 3 to 6 months the money that you're after. They're still refusing this offer. So that's where we are today.
Okay. Any questions specifically about the financial?
I just have a question. When the board is saying that the board is refusing this, is it the whole board, or do we know that the whole board is discussing, or is it just the
Well,
administration?
again, because I'm exchanging emails with Mary Blair, I write to her, I copy Kathy Holt, and I copy Kathleen Basham, who I met with Susan Patz from our group.
And I
So,
think you copied Susan
on
as
that
well.
particular email, I copied Susan because I knew she would be here today. And because we talk about board positions, the other board member who's in charge of identifying names from the list we've given her is Nancy Nasrallah. So I thought I'd email her too. So Kathy Holt is aware. I'm assuming she has access to a smartphone because she's traveling and she is moving. So, but I'm assuming that she has access to email. And in the answer I got yesterday, I was told Kathy Holt, Mary Blair. Kathy Holt is traveling. This is really something that is on her agenda. We haven't drafted a response yet, but my response will say, we're in a crisis. Where is the board? Where is the president of the board whose being away stops her from looking at mail with suggestions, solutions? Why is the board just being so absent, dormant, not critical, not proactive in offering other solutions than the sale of the buildings? That's our, yes. Yeah?
Could you explain for us what the financial, legal, technical ramifications on splitting the properties may be that would allow at least a plan B, a negotiation, a compromise between the board and the community?
Well, when this information came out, we started looking at different scenarios. Maybe selling the gallery building, moving into the studio building, looking at other premises, off the premises for a number of departments that are currently housed in the gallery building. The information we were given was that the bank is adamant that because there's a lien on both buildings must be sold. That's the first thing. We do not know, we have not heard from the board how they intend to move Clayworks from where it is today elsewhere. In any case, any sale transaction would probably take time, in which case our debt is going to increase without.
Does that ring true with your knowledge in terms of the legal and financial things?
Because the lien that the bank holds is on both buildings, I'm assuming that this is what they said. We weren't there.
And settle one, so to settle that lien on one.
Now, actually,
You can't settle the lien. The lien, I believe, it's for a certain amount, and it refers to all properties. And what we understand is the bank is requiring payment of the full amount. It's not isolated in order to release the lien. That's what the bank needs. Now, the actual option to sell one of the buildings and retain the other, so long as you satisfy the debt, the obligation, it still exists. However, the financial projections that they have shared with us, different potential scenarios, makes that an option they do not wish to pursue. They do not think that it does not leave Clayworks in a financially viable condition, even though the debt,
You never balance the books, so to speak.
well, even though
Well,
the
Balance the books, but you've lost an asset and you haven't moved forward
right,
to,
and
to improve the
there are
situation.
cash flow issues that continue.
And there's also the fact that if you sell, the argument is if you sell both properties, you get more money than if you sold each one separately.
Rima, I just, two had issues for me that I've been trying to track down, maybe you've been able to. My understanding of nonprofits is that they are, the board is to keep minutes that are publicly available and, the returns for the taxes. The minutes, I was told last time I asked, would be published on the website, but I have not been able to find them. So I sent a message to the board, but I got no response, and I would like to know if we could have the minutes, please. And the second thing is, where are the returns for 2015? Because I got two different versions. One was that it was filed at the end of 2015, and the other was that it had been held back and not filed until the end of 2016.
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
Those are also supposed to be public.
I understand. We too have asked for all those pieces. We have not received them. We have been told that the minutes would be made available to us, that they are assembling them, but that has not occurred. And we have had no answer despite, at this point, about the most recent 990 for 2015. So I mean, you know, there also are, there's conflicting impressions of what are the legal obligations and what are the traditional obligations. So in either case, we don't have that information right now. So please, let's that is being addressed. It's,
Okay, I was just wondering.
yeah.
And I apologize if I'm not understanding. Clayworks got an emergency loan of $50,000 on the condition that the buildings be listed, correct?
On the,
That's
no,
what we're-
they stated that there was no more money that would come
Right,
to
but I mean,
Clayworks from the bank.
ultimately, that's.
That- yeah.
So the question is, if you halt the sale, doesn't that $50,000 and then whatever else they decide to come immediately do?
I think, as a banker, if I've given you an ultimatum and you're coming back to me with solutions that
And you would be willing to go?
I don't know. I don't know. We're not counting on extra money from the bank in our effort today.
No, my question is, if
Right.
you halt the sale, which the bank has just told you is the condition of the money, don't they have the right to then come back and say,
Well, and the question-
I want the money
Right.
right now?
There-
The question is that, can we negotiate with the bank? I mean, we are not a, you
No,
know,
I'm just
we're not a
asking, like,
signature.
I'm asking, like, as a
Right.
banker, would that be the sort of immediate, normal response?
The bank did not affirm that they had to sell the property. We weren't privy to that conversation, actually. So I want, as a banker, dealing with a nonprofit, I would find it hard to impose on this nonprofit a condition to sell an asset, the maturity of which has not come yet. So I would be very careful as a bank because I would be if I put Clayworks out of business as a nonprofit, an institution in the city, there's a lot of mud that people would throw at the bank. Bad press, rumors, a lot of things can happen. So
Would you, as a banker, expect from that nonprofit, not just a plan for immediate financial things, but would you not expect a plan to be financially sound moving forward?
absolutely,
Part of that?
that's part of our agenda, stroke plan, stroke conversation with the board. We haven't had that opportunity yet. Because so far, the board is saying, we can't accept your terms, but they want us to accept their terms and assume that by selling the buildings, what we perceive as failures, although some people last week said, don't use the word failures, I don't think it's an understatement. I think that how can I trust a board that has not done its due diligence in running an institution like this? And they say, trust me, that's our best option. We're going to sell. We don't even know where we're going if we sell. We don't know whether any other building, location would have the amount of conveniences.
Wouldn't this be the time, and the group certainly, to start having those things?
Yes, yes.
If the board is involved with all these financial negotiators,
Sha is eager to jump in. So I'm gonna let her speak.
start having those conversations and working those out.
Absolutely, and that is part and parcel of the essence of this. It's a complex situation, and it's very clear that without a pause in the sales process, without the ability to evaluate offers in the light of other elements of the current proposal, several $100,000 in current funds. Without that pause, Clayworks does not have money. The Titanic is approaching the iceberg, and the only way to stop that is to sell the buildings and then figure out what that plan is. We are saying we believe that we can help, that we have the resources to negotiate with the bank to relieve that pressure, at least that an offer does not have to be accepted until the complete.
And I get that.
But it's during that time. It's during that time that that the complete examination of what has happened, of what can happen, of making a strategic and business plan that tells us, do we have to stay in Mount Washington or not? Do we have to sell or not? Is there a circumstance that is best for Clayworks, that is some other construction other than living in Mount Washington? That has to be looked at, and that's part of my next presentation to you all, is to share. I want us to actually take votes and express today to the board that we are open-minded about that. I feel that we were very direct in when we made the petition that we thought the studio building must not be sold and there must be no sale whatsoever. The language of the petition says at this time, but nonetheless, the impression that is held on to, certainly by Mary Blair, and we believe that her voice carries a lot of weight with the board members. Certainly she believes that we are wed to no sale whatsoever under any circumstance, and no sale, no consideration of the movement out of the studio building. And wait, can I let me please finish? I'm very passionate about this, and I'm trying to be very factual about it. So my friend Rima is going to hit me if my voice gets too emotional about this. So bear with me.
Can I just step in and disagree with you for a second? She's going to kick me off the group. What I'm hearing is, and there are questions, the focus today is on the huge pressing problem, which is money, so that they can keep the doors open. What you're looking ahead to is really, certainly everyone's thinking about it, but energy has to be held off on that a little bit.
But
And we'll get to it.
my point is that and maybe you would know better, if I'm a financial person, donor, whatever, I wanna know, not just are you raising funds, I wanna know right now, what are your options, what are you looking at?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Not something 6 months from now, when you've already been doing this. for
Exactly,
4 months.
exactly. And we
Conversation.
know that those donors have conditions. And we are going to work with them to identify how that can work. And the bank is going, if they will let us participate in this, the bank is going to know that the first, that maybe this $300,000 or whatever number it is doesn't get transferred right away. You know, the checks aren't written. These are pledges that address the indebtedness, and that they may or may not
Right.
move forward. There's also fundraising that will support the current operation to keep the doors open. That those we propose would be funds that, if we can get these agreements, that the board is expanded to include community members, and the list of people that we recommended. Please, Liz, please. I'm sorry. Please let me explain. And if I fail to answer your question, I welcome your additional questions. That donors are represented among the group that are proposed to be on the board, and that is very traditional in nonprofit and arts organizations, that donors are represented. There are people represented on that proposed list who have other skill sets, let's just call it that are missing from the current mix of board members, and are certainly germane to addressing the immediate financial problems as well as the long-term operations plans.
I want to say, just add one thing for Susan's benefit, because I think the question is, who is the board who is saying yes or no to our requests? It's our impression that it's Kathy Holt and Mary Blair, and we're not sure about full board involvement in those things. When we suggested in the email that Rima mentioned that 7 of 9 names that we submitted be added immediately to the board, the response was, there's a process, there's a nominating committee, there's resume submission, there's this long process. You cannot ask us to go against our process. I think we're asking you to take back to your board that this is an emergency, that this has been delayed since last August when Rima offered her help, and others have stepped forward offering their help, and that there have been lists submitted up until now. And the very first order of business, in our view, is that you ask your fellow board members to allow a change in that process to fill up the board with energy and skills that would help us. Thank you.
Yeah, as I'm listening to this, just a few things are occurring to me. You know, if, as the board is saying, and as the information that we're getting it is accurate, that we are in this dire financial situation that needs to be ready immediately, I'm not even entirely sure that selling the buildings is going to be an immediate thing. I mean, I think the gallery building probably has some commercial value and as office buildings or some type of commercial enterprise, but the studio building is a very specialized space with the studios and the kiln rooms, and I'm just like wondering how much of a market is there going to be for that particular building, so I'm not sure it's going to get sold quickly. And the converse of that is, if we move to another place, wherever we move is going to have really expensive renovations because it has to fit codes for as far as the electrical and as far as the ventilation and other things that are very unique to working with clay. So I just kind of wonder about the financial thinking behind this selling the building.
It'll be a loss.
And also, you know, and another thing, you know, so if they're saying the only solution is selling the building, we've looked at all kinds of other options. have any of us been asked to help out? No. And it occurred to me that, there's this six-figure amount of money that's potentially donorship. We got 700 passionate people to sign this petition right away. If even half of those 700 people commit to raising $1,000, that's $350,000 right there. And it just seems like all options have not been looked at.
I agree.
So, what
Carla? I'm sorry.
Yes. Just so you know, I was turning some pots the other day, and they were showing the building to people who were saying, oh, we could put carpeting here, we could put my offices here, we could do this. So it's not just a clay building, it's something, just so you know. But the other question is, it's been a while, you've been trying to get the board to cooperate and to be, work together, et cetera, it's not happening. What are the other options? If they say, no, we're never gonna do it, what do we do?
Well, that's, we have been asking that question from the beginning of ourselves. We have had some conversations with experts in nonprofit and in law who have counseled us, have guided us. We have not engaged any of those services, and we have not specifically been told that there is, an avenue.
I want to say, this again is for you, Susan. It would be possible for board members to request a change in leadership of the board. You are the ones who can do it. And it's our very strong concern at this point that if board members should learn that in fact Irv Walker's recommendations were misrepresented to you all, that might form the basis of a request for change in leadership. Because it's very serious to misrepresent a lawyer's advice to the team at Clayworks and to tell the community, which we were told in the board provided answers to our 13 questions, that this was what he said. And then the backpedaling occurred that they misspoke. And I would think there are board members, along with you, who might feel very concerned about that.
First I've heard of today.
Well, we're glad that you're here to hear this. And we would welcome the chance to meet with board members and discuss this further, because you can vote people on the board and you can vote people off of the board. And it seems like that's a possibility.
Yeah, it's, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I have two questions which you need to. Number one, we're saying we want to put some other board members on. The board members are saying that's not our process. Because that's not our process. But is there a legal process, or if that's part of the bylaws?
The bylaws do have a provisions for special meetings.
But for
So it is
members.
not accurate to say that they don't have the opportunity.
I don't know what the bylaws say,
Right.
but if the bylaws say the new members have to be put in a certain way, if they let these new people on without going through that process, they have just violated their own bylaws.
Yes. However,
It's a concern.
sorry.
And my second one is, from all I'm hearing about what the board is getting to the government, what is that gonna look, how's that gonna make us look as a nonprofit? We can lose that status.
Absolutely.
If somebody's donating $100, they might not care. Somebody who's donating 100,000, they care.
Exactly right. In fact, we think that there are more than just that one potential big liability in the current situation. How the legal process would deal with it, we don't know. But there are definitely issues that need to be, that can be brought up, that need to be addressed, you know. Yes?
You're trying really hard to get the board to accept something from you, some kind of offer. They have all the power. They are the legal entity.
That's right.
And I think that after a while, you know, how many times are you going to get no? And they're just going to go ahead and do whatever they want anyway. I mean, this is a group that wants to use its power, and they're really not interested in communicating. So you could play nice,
We have,
and you have.
we have been
You have been-
extremely
and
nice.
it's not going to get you anywhere because they're not nice.
When?
And so,
Well,
I mean,
let's not make a
it
global
makes
statement
worse.
about
I'm
that.
saying that they want it their way, and they hold the power. They hold the legal power.
They do hold the.
I
And
think-
the only way that maybe you would gain any kind of credence is to go to the media. And I know that once that happens, the pressure would be on them to at least acknowledge that they've heard you and maybe give some kind of answers.
That's a very good observation. And, you know, the first media exposure was concurrent with our community meeting, and it was the board who sent out the news release that they're contemplating the sale of buildings. There's also been coverage in the Mount Washington newsletter, which got a lot of attention, which was accurate in portraying what people said. And then there was a report on WYPR just last week that it was such a bad PR thing that I've exercised the headline from my head. It was, you know, Clayworks in debt, selling buildings or something. I mean, you know, it
And
was,
up for sale.
but buildings up for sale, something horrible. And just this week, the Baltimore Sun reporter who wrote the initial program has interviewed a couple of individuals, and he's gonna be talking to me on Monday and some board representative. There will be another,
He's spoken to Deb.
there will be another Baltimore Sun article next week. We have been very nice, and we have been very dignified about it, in that we are not trying to make trouble. We're trying to work with these folks. And you're right, the end of the rope is right there. You know what I mean?
This is a wonderful group of people who care desperately about what's happening, but we have no power.
Which is why we thought that by having a few voices on the board, we could then speak in a unified voice with other board members. But we are.
That's a decent thing to do.
I beg your pardon?
But, you know, it's.
Well, and the other thing that, let's just, we are running out of time, and we are very afraid about that. We are very afraid about that. And your advice is well taken, and believe me, we listen, we're gonna heed it. All this publicity, every day, the reputation of Baltimore Clayworks suffers. Every day, and this has been going on for several months. And we've seen declines in enrollment, we've seen missed, very modest fundraising goals, missed targets. We've seen kilns not firing and not being repaired. We've seen, you know, there's, and now we've seen this news media coverage and public announcements of dire financial circumstances.
That's why you have to be
proactive.
Right.
You have to go to
Right.
them and get your story out, not their story.
I understand
And
that.
not hearsay.
I understand that, and believe me, I'm with you 100%. We just have,
Okay,
we
let's
we
let
have,
other-
we
let's
have,
let some
we
other-
have tried up till now
Okay.
to
Okay,
avoid
Kathleen.
using that.
I
Tool.
understand, but maybe it's time.
Yes.
I have one more question that that relates to this fundraising effort. I can tell you, I was at the Store Limited and I was talking to Betty Cook. Betty says, you know, it's terrible what's happening with Clayworks, and she said, you know, for years, they have not come back to me for any donations. I said, I'm asking you right now. And she said, absolutely, I'll be happy to
Right.
do something. So suddenly, I'm thinking to myself, am I helping the board? Or am I, you know, and hindering our effort?
Yeah.
And I sort of don't know what to do.
I understand that conundrum. Here's my take on that. You know, I think one of the weaknesses has been an erosion in relationships that have been built over many years. Betty Cook is a good example. There are literally dozens of them, and it's not even worth trying to figure out how they got eroded. They got eroded. They got neglected. They got eroded. It's still Baltimore Clayworks. I still love Clayworks. I want to take classes. I buy my classes and I go. And there's an auction. The bash is on.
That's what I'm talking about.
Exactly on that. It's on April 22nd, and I not only am going to buy tickets. I want
Physically.
everybody. I want us to show up in such force
You
because
can't-
we are Baltimore Clayworks.
But you can't buy your tickets online because the website sends you to a link, which is a white page. And when you say to the board, that's the situation, the answer is, oh, you're using Internet Explorer, you should use Safari or Chrome. No, I am using Chrome. Oh, because sometimes this is medieval thinking. We are any
And it is, you know, I'm sure that somebody's attending to that horrible problem that existed. That is just, there was no reasonable answer to it, but somebody's
Yeah.
attending to it. I believe that the
Let
link
Laura speak.
that was sent out last week is correct and is accessible. You know, if they're screwed up on the website, it doesn't mean that we can't pick up the phone and buy a ticket. It doesn't mean that we can't walk in there and buy a
Actually,
ticket.
is it reasonable to tell people that, tell Betty Cook to sign on to the petition?
Well,
I did.
right.
Oh, I gave it to her, and she had, and to all her employees. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Laura, did you have a question?
I'd like to, as a previous board member, I can't believe that every single board member feels that we should just say no to all of this. So I just keep coming back to, it's gotta get beyond the top two. And if we could go back to them and following up on Pat's suggestion of ask the rest of the board to consider that. This is becoming a real obstruction to a
Right.
lot of wonderful positive activity. And I think my suggestion to you is rather than just communicate with one or two, copy the entire board on all of that so that they all see how hard we are trying to get the word to them, because they might not be getting it.
I agree with you, and I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but one of the specific actions that I'd like you to do on the agenda are the email addresses of everybody that we know of that is currently on the board, and I'm not gonna tell you what to write, but, you know, saying nasty things isn't gonna get you anywhere.
Please don't do that.
Don't do, you know, say you wanna help, say I care about Clayworks, say you believe that, the people working on the campaign have proposed reasonable things and have been, have held back on everything else, so, yeah. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
hi, my name's Ruth Goldstein, and I'm not part of this community, but I'm supportive, and I've been following this for the last month or so. And, it clearly, this community, you want to preserve the Clayworks culture and the Clayworks community. I think an important question to ask in light of the fact that, the board has, rejected all of your overtures. They went to the press. There was a third thing, clearly rejecting all of these ideas. The question is, what does the board want to do? It seems like they want to blow up Clayworks. If they had laid out, a path forward, maybe not even a property that they're going to, but an
vision.
actual, scenario, maybe there wouldn't be as many of these doubts and this much division. But, it's pretty clear what this community wants. It's not very clear what the board culture is or what they want. And, I can understand losing faith in continuing these negotiations, because I don't get the impression that they either want to preserve Clayworks or know how to, or have a real clear vision of how to, even if they do want to. So it's not the community.
Susan, do you wanna say
there's a breakdown in
something? Do you wanna
communication between the board and the community, because the community has lost trust
No,
in the board.
it's not a
So
breakdown, it's a total lack.
a total lack of, I'm being kind, breakdown, but the point is, it's the lack of communication has caused the community that supports Clayworks to lose trust in the board.
I get it. Oh, boy, do I get it. I get it. So, I can tell you what I'm thinking. I can't speak for the board because it's just me. Okay.
Good one.
So, if we have two assets. Put aside that we may or may not have to do anything right this second. Put that aside. Right now, we have two big assets. We've got the parking lot and the gallery building, and then we have the studio building over here. And out of all these buildings is where all of our mission is. So there are us, the groups that does education. Here's Matt over here, he can tell you. Stand up, Matt. You be the education guy. Okay. And then we have community arts. Anybody wanna be? Laura, you wanna be community arts? Stand up here. Here we go. All right, here's Laura. She's gonna be community arts. Who else we got? We do Clayworks. We have education. Exhibitions. Who wants to be exhibitions? All right, here we go. So here's the exhibitions over here. Then we have, all right, we got community arts, exhibitions. We got arts programming, which is what? Residency. All right, who wants to be that?
Come on, you be the resident, Mark.
Come on. Okay. Okay, we've got one more big one.
Aspirers.
So we have exhibitions. Where does that come in this mix?
Let's see, where else? Exhibition?
Where does exhibitions come in this mix? Okay, we got one more program area, and I'm blanking on it because I'm an idiot.
County art.
No, there's not. There's a fifth one, isn't there? There's students. That's education.
The sale, the sale, again.
Well, I'm thinking of exhibition and.
No, it's two separate things, the store, the store.
We need a shop first.
The gallery shop.
Gallery, your gallery.
So these are the 5 program areas, and I'm just speaking for myself, my other board members might go, oh my God, what is she talking about? But here we are, okay. So if we sell the gallery building, okay, who's gotta sit down? Get out, all right.
I gotta go remote.
Yep, well, hang on. So the shop's gonna go, or else it's gonna be extremely small. It might be the bathroom, ladies are, could be very small, but they're making us money, so we don't wanna get rid of them, right? Nobody wants to do that. So if we.
But wait, I can
Susan.
still come up.
Susan,
I
you
can
know,
come back because I can be part of the other part. of the
wait a minute,
building.
but I'm sorry, okay.
I don't know what What I'm saying is, if we all try to get everything smushed into that one building, a lot of this is gonna have to go. Do we wanna cut our programming down to nothing but me taking a class down there and a teeny bit of community
Well,
arts?
there's other ideas. There could be be a
You ask me
shop
what we're
and a
thinking,
high-
I'm telling you, this is
And
what
I
it is.
disagree,
You could
because
put a
I
shop
think
and a
everything
high
can
traffic
be
area.
squished.
Could we
But
hear
let her finish her
Susan's
point. Could
What
we
was
hear?
what was your point? What was
My
your
point is,
My point
if we all try to snish into the smaller Mount Washington, a lot of our program areas are gonna be very small. They're gonna get small because they have to be. Which means you're not making any money off of them either. So then your budget's smaller. However, if we can sell the whole thing, which I'm not saying we should or not, because we haven't done the homework yet. We don't know what the offers are. We don't know what the money is. We don't know. So until we know what that money looks like, then we can't decide. But if we can go someplace else that's cheaper, it doesn't cost us so much every single month to keep it up with a new roof and then the whole, I mean, there's a big, water main that's gonna have to, we don't have $90,000 to dig that thing up. We don't have it. So that's what we're thinking, is to try to stabilize the money. And does that mean we might have to retrench and go to a smaller place? Well, maybe we do, maybe we don't. We don't know yet, and we won't know until we get some offers or look at what we're talking about today. So really, it's all thinking about things, and there's some things you just can't talk about ahead of time. So that's all I have to say about that.
Are you willing to talk to the board and say, I really think we ought to meet with one of these folks and?
Oh, we're doing it already, and we want to keep doing that, because it's important. You're important.
They're not.
Clayworks is not just the building, it's us. We are Clayworks.
Why aren't you hearing what she's saying?
We did, we talked about that.
Already heard this.
It is not our place to say that the studio building is, must stay. We simply are saying we must not, take an action that makes it too late to do some good thinking.
So Marsha, the way I just try to translate what you're saying is basically what we are trying to do is buy some time so that you have more time to plan, because of course, you don't know what's going on, but I think if you sell the building, let's say you get somebody who buys it, makes a big offer tomorrow, you sell the building, then you're even more in a fix because you didn't have any time to make a plan. So just to buy time and then see what is and then you have a strategic plan, and you can really.
We have suggested to the board, we're not buying time by asking you not to sell.
We're saying we understand that your back is against the wall and you have no option, or you've told us so. So we assume you have no option and no power to change the situation. We're saying, okay, we understand this. Leave the properties on the market, but let us speak together as one voice. Allow us on the board. Let us give you suggestions as to how we can improve things. Let us deal with the immediate emergency, which is to repay some of the lines of credit from the bank, while at the same time devising together a vision for Clayworks that is basically what the community wants. At this point in time, the vision for Clayworks is what the community wants. It's not what the board wants. Board members of a nonprofit like Clayworks have to listen to us as a community. We're saying, just delay that sale. Don't accept anything before you come back and we discuss it as board members, because then we have a voice, then we can make changes, then our voice will be efficient, then we can speak to donors, then we can go crowdfunding. We have a list of things we can do. Look into maybe the change in the gallery building as to what the gallery building will include. We looked at profit centers according to what the board has told us. So we know where some areas are faring better than others. We can maybe downsize some areas that are not making money at the benefit of others that are making money and that maybe require more space. Clayworks cannot afford to just sell one building. We either look at the whole vision of Clayworks that currently includes both buildings, or in the future, we're on board, we've looked at the options. Yes, there are major repairs to the gallery building. We know that it is an expensive venture, but we possibly could also raise enough money to deal with the roof. Maybe we can deal with all the weaknesses that have led to shortages of a number of things, and certainly killing the morale, not just of the community. I have in my mind all the time, teachers, resident artists, all these people don't know whether, I mean, this is, I don't want to point at Matt. I'm sure in his wisdom he's thinking, do I have a job tomorrow? What do I do? Should I have a family and kids to feed? Am I going elsewhere now while I still have something in hand and I can start looking for a job elsewhere? Maybe join forces with another clay community or studio, or how am I? So all these questions, you're putting, staff morale is down. We've lost important people. We've lost, I'm sure you walk into Clayworks today and it's like you're going to somebody's funeral. Nobody speaks to anybody. There used to be joy, there used to be conversations, there used to be laughter, people played music. Today, if you have 15 students in the studio building, you're lucky. You're lucky. So we're saying, let's stop the hemorrhage. Let us do something for you. We're not asking you to step aside, not yet, but we're saying, hear us. We have that ability to bring the money. And we're talking about serious people. We're not talking about fly-by-night, someone who's earned his money or won the lottery. We're talking about people who are major donors around the city, who are involved in arts, who want the survival of a Clayworks as a community institution. But so far, the only option is we need to sell. What is your vision for the future? We don't know.
So we're not at a point yet where I mean, not that we could, would have any power, but we could ask people to step down.
Of course we could. We can't ask people to step down. We have no power. That's exactly what Kathleen is saying. As long as we're on the outside, we can make noise. We can talk to the media. We can have sit-ins outside of Baltimore Clayworks. But unless we're on the board to be efficient and effective and try and look at the weaknesses and all the mistakes that were made, the obvious mistakes, the misrepresentations. I think Pat hinted at this earlier. Misrepresentations. This is not, the board members are not dealing seriously with their fiduciary responsibility to a non-profit involved in the arts. Plus, have we checked with the state whether we can sell? The state is a donor to Baltimore Clayworks. There's so many options. Maybe the board has done this. We don't know the answers to this unless we have a dialogue and we understand that we're all in the same boat to save this institution. What form, what shape, one building, two buildings, this comes later. Today, we need to save it. And I promised myself not to be passionate.
Has someone looked over the bylaws to look at what is the actual language of the function of the board members? And if there is, if the board members are there to support and further progress the Clayworks community, then there's a failure there somewhere, because they're totally resisting any efforts or interest that has been given to this process from people outside of the board. And if that's the case, then they're not fulfilling their duties. And what recourse does the nonprofit have at that point to deal with this sort of a situation?
Pat maybe wants to answer.
You want to
this
speak
one?
about that?
Yeah, there are efforts to pursue, get legal advice on this. I think the best is to solve this jointly, and I think, Susan, again and again, you were delegated to be the person working with this broader community, but I still feel that when you speak, you aren't hearing the serious lack of trust that exists right now. And that, and I hope that you can tell us today or shortly after today, how we can speak to the broad board without Mary and Kathy. And whether the board would address the damage in having Mary Blair acting as interim ED on the organization as a whole. Because that was apparently a board action, and I think many people have concerns as that continues that it's very problematic.
And there's a
Question here.
website that you can all find. I think it's marylandnonprofits.org. And that's the Maryland Association. Mano, is that the organization? And they have a wonderful description on there of the life cycle of a nonprofit. And if you look at it, there's this period called decline and crisis. And you just look at it and you see Baltimore Clayworks in there. And if you look at the next line is renewal. And if you look at that, you can imagine Baltimore Clayworks in that renewal.
It's actually, Marcia, it's actually on the National Council of Nonprofits website, which is the umbrella organization.
Okay, we have two comments here and here.
I'm not a member of this community, but it means a lot to me that Clayworks was saved. But you're all talking around Robin Hood's barn, and I really hate to say it. I mean, you're very kind, wonderful people, but that's not what you need. What he's saying is the only thing. You have to see the bylaws. And until you see those bylaws.
We have the bylaws. Everybody
You have
says
the
it.
bylaws?
Oh, yeah.
And the bylaws say that you can put a member of this group on to that board?
No.
There's a process for
That has to
adding
be
people,
voted on, you
and
have to
the-
send your resume, months and years.
No, it doesn't have to be, it is not timed. It is simply a process that is articulated. It's a nomination has to be made by one of the board members.
And you know how long that takes?
It doesn't have to take that long.
Happen over email.
You know, I want to tell you something. They voted on the accepting the terms of the $50,000 loan as soon as they had to. They figured out a way to take that vote immediately. It wasn't at a scheduled.
How long ago did you ask them if a member of this group could be on their board?
Well, several people have asked that for
Many months.
many months.
We have a question here, this lady.
And I, you know, for one reason or another, the nominating committee or the committee on trustees did not meet for over 18 months. It met a couple days ago, and I believe that there were 2 people present there. That's all we know.
I'll just share my experience with the nominating committee, while I was still on the board. It was brought up that there's a new nominating committee, who it was that was leading it, send your names, any suggestions, send it. Meanwhile, I had 2 people that I thought would be terrific. I was trying to get our community representatives on the board. So, I contacted a couple, got just a name and an email, sent that off, and then Steve said, nope, let the trustees do that, the committee. But Kathy Holt came back and said, oh, send me a short bio so we can contact and get a little background. So I put together a 4-sentence or 2-sentence, just a really short bio from each of the applicants, I guess, candidates, and forwarded that along. Thought that was all underway. Nothing. I think as of last week, one of them had not even been contacted. The other was Pam Worthington, who was a founder who was very interested in getting back on the board. And the other name was Kyle Bauer's wife, who is
Aaron,
who has a lot of background in ceramics and fundraising and nonprofits and could be a good, whatever. So, nothing, and I kept asking, how are things, where are they? Didn't realize, and I was only on the board until December, but at that point, there was no process. I kept saying, well, what is the process? There is no process in the bylaws, by the way, it just says 5 to 35 board members. So,
No, there is
what's that?
There's something about how a nomination is presented
It
and.
can be rushed in a situation.
Yeah, I mean, Susan, there's no reason why you couldn't, as a board member, ask that these people be placed on the board, and then it be expedited. And that's an ask to you today.
Nancy Nasrallah is in charge of that committee, and I'm not gonna jump in her face about that. I will say, there are people that have been, where are we on that? I can ask that, but I'm not gonna second guess what she does, because I trust her opinion, I trust who she is.
That's Nancy?
Nancy Nasrallah. I trust her.
It's not about whether we trust her. We're saying this group needs action in a different way than is being controlled by the current board. And I guess
By the current leader.
by the current leadership of the board. And then in your response, it sounds like you're just going to kind of hand that over and let it go on as it's going on. And I think it's important that you're here to let us know that that's where it is. Because you're not gonna take this urgent message back, it sounds.
What I said was, I trust Nancy to do her job, and I will certainly speak to her about that, but I'm not gonna tell her how to do her job. We're all volunteers, that's her job, I've got 4 other committees I'm on. We work hard. She's doing the best she can. I'll be glad to speak to her about it, and I promise you I will, but I'm not gonna get in her face about it because it's her job.
All right, well, I will tell you that Mary Blair's answer by email goes much further than that. It says, we are not going to entertain these nominations. And she does go on to say that this is a question better addressed to the board than to me as acting executive director. And it's our intention to address those questions to every member of the board. It's
At the next April board meeting.
before.
How can one board member refuse that?
Well, I think, Laura, you can speak to that. It's that, the decision, the decisions are in the hands of the leaders, and that's not to say that other board members don't contribute and don't disagree, but there is no doubt from everything we've seen that these 2 people are leading. That's what they're doing. They're leading. And the word needs to get broader.
I have 2 questions. The first one is, are you supporting the auction and do you want people to go to the auction?
Yeah.
I think so,
Okay.
yeah.
The second is what I said before. It's been months. They don't want to do it. They are not interested. They're not going to do it. They say they don't want to do it. They're not doing it. Anytime they got people who are going to do it, well, we're sitting there.
But that's not true. I think the forces are out enough. Everyone is here to say that it's not going to happen.
How are they going to make it not happen?
Well, we're working on it, as Marcia just presented, and all of the resources. How could you say that it's, just because the building is not on the market does not mean that it is sold.
I agree, but I'm saying, what do we do to make it more urgent to the board and directors that,
That's what we're doing.
or what?
Yeah, well, I think we have to figure that out.
Okay, it's in the process.
George, you want to say
There's a-
something?
Yes.
I have just a thought, and let me know if I'm not getting, that it's already out there. I don't remember the email that you sent, Marcia, but there was a little blurb on there where, we had to respond to say that, yes, you could use our name or something like that, that you are representing, who are you representing? And, I don't mean any negative stuff, but to me, some of the emails that I've read, not from you guys, but that there's suspicion about, there's this sort of weird suspicion from Kathy Holt, from other people about who we are. Are we actually members, students, artists, this kind of thing. And so I think that I was wondering, listening to the banker, sorry, I don't know your first name. Rima, right. And you were saying that people need to come to your bank and sort of let you know that something's wrong and that they're working on it. So I would just got to thinking was that the suspicious nature is still there. They're questioning about this, like who are we, when we are who, all of us.
That was stated on that,
Right,
on that
so
list, on the petition.
Right, so I was wondering whether you keep it, and you keep in part going to the board and asking them for something that they obviously just can't do. So I was kind of wondering whether you could have a parallel universe where you get really clear on all the people, all the abilities of the fundraising into like minute, crazy detail. But if you're dealing with somebody who is suspicious, they need as much detail as possible. So even on the anal side of it, we think it's anal, but it might quench some of the suspicion where how many donors, all the donors, as many as you could find of the donors, how many of the fundraising activities can you do, and have them as like a blueprint for a building that you're building.
I understand, and you know, and I, it's not, it hasn't, you, as you asked, it hasn't been out there specifically like that.
Yeah.
But the voices have been heard.
Yeah, I'm sure.
The voices have been heard. They have not been respected. I mean, you know, I joke about being the mouthpiece here, you know, of the campaign. And let's just say for a minute that Mary Blair is the mouthpiece of, on behalf of the board. She's no longer a board member. She's the acting executive director, but she was a board member and continues to sit in all the deliberations, et cetera, et cetera. And she wrote me an email yesterday saying that, you know, she believes that we are not open-minded, that we do not, she believes that that the board is trying to save Clayworks, and some of us only want to save a building. And I want us to say unanimously here, if we can, so to Susan Vernon, so she can take it back and it can be recorded, that we care about saving Clayworks, not that we are not about saving a building. We believe that the examination of all the right things to do needs to happen before we pick a building or a location. Can we say that to her? That we are open-minded?
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, you know, more than one board member has explained to me, not just Mary Blair, that they have been hurt by what they believe is our questioning their motives. And I'm here to tell you that I don't question their motives. I question their decisions. I question the processes that they've empowered and some of the decisions that they've made. I think they have not been informed by complete information, and certainly not informed by the input of this community.
Excuse me, but just let me say one thing. Anyone who ever tells you, don't question my motives, is hiding something.
All right, and let's have this comment, and then let's use our last 15 minutes for really some thinking about next steps and how we move forward to accomplish.
I'm sitting here and I just can't help but think, you know, anybody who's questioning like who we are and what our motives are, we are Clayworks. I mean, we're the teachers, we're the students, we're the people that buy things in the gallery, we are Clayworks. And so for somebody to like wonder what we are, what our motives are.
Well, that's what I meant about getting detailed, getting anally detailed.
But the only problem with getting anally details is it takes time to do it, and we're afraid that the buildings are gonna, there's a contract is gonna be accepted before it's too late. We literally believe that the pressure is so great on those board members and their unwillingness as a unit to open their minds to our help standing in the way.
I want to say something, which I'll probably get blasted for, but, so the Clay Bash, which you don't see much about, that's on April 22nd, and why can't we say, since not the building, why can't we really try to generate and motivate people to save Clayworks and get people out, and that's where the money, like save Clayworks, come out and say it, not in these little rooms that we are, and money talks. And that's what, instead of skirting, I don't think the board's gonna do anything. They say they're not gonna do anything. So if the only thing is get it out there, really out there. We are concerned, come to the bash, which isn't always well attended, and so like how we were able to get 700 names on a petition, let's say that we're gonna try to get 10 or 20 people, whatever, to this auction, and it's about saving Clayworks.
You can do it with, we can do it with placards. I mean, I've done this kind. You can do it with placards. You can do it with that wonderful guy that writes for the Sun papers. So let him say. What's his name?
I know we wanna do that. I would say we want, what we want is a plan to save Clayworks. We've gotta have a plan. That's what's missing in this whole business. You don't discover on February 3rd that you got out of debt. You don't discover this Monday. You also don't not consult with your community along the process. It should have been saved a long time ago. But I think it's gonna be hard to get anybody to invest in the auction or anything else without knowing what's going on. Without a feeling that the leadership is listening and that we're in it together.
And there is an opportunity to change that. We've given them a
Get us
proposal.
on that board. Let us work together.
What I was trying to say before, I wasn't trying to be negative, was how you gonna get them to do it?
What?
We're trying to persuade them,
Can I?
I'd like to follow up your suggestion earlier about, gave us the board list, right? Do you want us to sort of communicate, like, can these 750 people communicate to the board, all the board,
Right.
about what you want this group to be for, right?
Right.
I think that's the next step, not just to communicate that and copy them all. You need to send this with all those addresses, and we can just copy and paste those addresses in there, and we can communicate that to them, identifying who we are, our multiple roles of that petition.
Right.
Here I am, my relationship to Clayworks, I support this community.
I'm for that. Who else is for that? Great.
So we should draft, a message for that.
Yes.
But let's have, are there,
Of doing our own messages.
Yeah,
You just need talking.
In here.
Sure, of course.
If I'm gonna be looking at those emails, if 50% of them have almost the same verbiage, I'm gonna say, oh, hell no.
No, we want you to write your own email. We want you to write your own email.
all right, let's hang on. So that's one suggestion.
I just need to write your name.
Susan, do you think that will be, how will that play with the board?
Try it.
Yeah, every board member gets a copy.
We'll give you that, I'm sure I can count on everybody in this room to spend 10 minutes writing some emails and do what you think is best. We will make sure that you have the emails and
Can we just enumerate the things you've asked for, nominate and get people on the board?
Get people on the board,
What else? Give us an opportunity to say.
a joint, statement that allows, for fundraising. How else should we articulate?
Can you send that out?
You said something.
Yeah, we can do that. We
We'll
can
do
certainly
that
do
to
that.
everybody who signed today.
Yeah, well, and we'll put it on the website.
You
And
may want to temper your request about the board positions and making this a temporary ad hoc kind of situation, that you're not asking for board seats from this point on.
well,
I
you
know
know,
that's important.
I understand what you're
Yeah.
saying. There's, the bylaws don't have different classes of voting membership on the board. But in fact, there's a number of the people who are on that list who have said, I wanna do it, but I won't do it for more than a year. I wanna, make this happen to save Clayworks and put it on solid footing that everybody believes in.
Well, and by being a board member, you have fiduciary responsibility. I think it's
Right.
important to share that fiduciary responsibility.
Yes,
When you do
and
it,
that
you
actually
do it.
was enumerated, then the people that are that join the board will share in that fiduciary responsibility.
You know, if they're adamant about not being able to accommodate, seating more people on the board, sometimes the committee process is much less well-defined in the bylaws and a lot looser, and maybe, you're not gonna be voting members, but if you can have seats on the fundraising committee and the finance
Well,
committee and
let me
those
just,
kinds of things.
yes, you're right. However, the most important committee that was created in recent times was this task force that doesn't quite have a well-articulated charge, but they are to examine the physical needs and the costs of those needs for Clayworks in the event of a move either into one building or someplace else. And we asked, could we suggest people's names to be on that board, that task force? We were told yes. We provided a list of names. One of them was added to the board, to the task force, Pat. The rest of them were never contacted, never interviewed, never considered, as far as we know. It was a unilateral decision by the board president who would be on that task force, and that's how she handled it. It's my impression that the committee structure has been very informal in the last several years, and that the finance committee says it didn't receive information for months on end.
How about we post the bylaws online, that we have a vote?
And can I just take a moment, because I realized who you were, we got your name as one of the names submitted.
I know.
And can you just introduce yourself and George as well to the folks who are here?
Well, my name is Al Cooper, and I am the executive director of the Atlantic Arts Foundation, but I also live in Mount Washington, and I've been coming to Clayworks for years and years and years.
And Alan is one of the names on the list of people who is willing to step up onto the board. And just George, if you would.
I always wanted to step up on the board. I always wanted to step up on this ad hoc committee in this transition team. I'm a curator resident at Maryland Institute College of Art.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty good credentials.
And Carla,
Skill sets.
I was at the Maryland State Art Council for 21 years, and I was the administrator for the Clayworks grant. I was their program director, and I taught.
And Carla's also on the list of people submitted to be board members. And these are the people, Susan, I just can't stress enough that if you can overstep Nancy, you can encourage Nancy with all the might you have welcome
I'm
these
just
folks
whispering
onto the
that in
board,
her
along
ear.
with Rima, Susan Patz, and some others who are on that list.
Well, you know,
Right away.
I doubt that it is Nancy. I think Nancy probably cannot give that approval. That probably needs to come from Kathy.
No,
Or
but
Nancy.
press that on the list of names that was submitted for us to look into, vet, interview, have a discussion with. I don't even need to go into all this. I know that's somebody whose CV online speaks for himself. Get him on board. He's
How lucky we would be to have people like this on our board helping us design the future of the Clayworks. Right.
I just have a question about these emails we want to send. I think it would be helpful if we had talking points, not that you told us exactly what to say, but these are the important issues to get some folks on board to blah, 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 you know.
Okay,
Just
we
so
will,
there's, and I'll help you,
good point.
type that up.
That'd be great, that'd be great.
And stuff, we can, so that there are talking points people can choose from, so it's not, especially the 700.
We'll work on that, we'll try to get that up on the website, and, you know, I think you've all noticed, but if you haven't, we post things on the website, and we also send an email to everyone who signed the petition and gave us their email.
So you have
You know.
mass mailing?
I mean, not everybody who signed the petition chose to give us an email, but, you know, so about 700 people received everything, but it's always on the website. If you get bored and want to go back and see what's up, please go there.
I want to share, Deb is at NCCA with 7,000 people, and she sent this message, and I think it's worth reading. We're fighting for our spiritual center, our sense of place, our locus for being together as a community of artists, teachers, and students. We are all of those things from time to time. Art making is spiritual practice, and it unites us. Clayworks and the people in them are not commodities to be brokered on a real estate deal. And they are not to be monetized and objectified. And that sort of message, I think, is what is really sort of the value of our speaking out together. And it really is what we share deeply with a board that wants to work in these interests. Thank you. Thank you for being here, Susan. And I really hope that you can deliver our message.
I say I'm doing it, I'm doing it. So what you should main thing, I'd like to
We hope at some point to form some committees, working groups, and there are some papers around on these tables. If there is something that jumps out at you that you wanna be involved in working on, please put your name on those with a Post-it or just with the pens that are there. Yes, Susan.
I'd like to get this straight, and I said I was gonna take it back to the board, and I'm gonna. This is a quote, more or less. We care about saving Clayworks, not about saving a building. We are open-minded. Is there anything else you'd like me to add to that?
We have already said this to the board.
No, I think it needs to be
I
restated.
just want to ask you, what do you want me to say? Is it-
Yeah.
I think we want you to take back to
Yes.
the board our concern that the board chair and the interim ED have misrepresented communications with Irving Walker, and that is important information for the full board to have. Do people agree?
Well,
Yes.
And that the community wants,
And it's in writing from the question and answers to the board, to and from us, and answered by the board. The board, we don't know who that is.
Okay, good.
And, I mean, I feel strongly, and I would like others to weigh in on this, that the role of Mary Blair as interim ED should not continue. And I think we should hear a voice on it. But it's further demoralizing to the life of Clayworks. Is there anything else from the room that we want Susan to take back? Yeah.
I'm just,
It's free.
I'm
She is doing
stickler
it for
for
free.
clarity, but it seems like the language that Susan got from Marcia could be interpreted to be at odds other things that you're saying. Because we are actually trying to postpone the sale of the building while we get time to look at things, if we can. I mean, financially, Rima, what you said makes it sound like there is no time for all this nice stuff about adding to the board and all that. It sounds like there is no time, and that we would be counting our blessings to have somebody buy it tomorrow and keep the Clayworks name and put it somewhere else. I don't know, but it just, if Susan goes back to the board with the message that she just read, which was pretty much a verbatim
You're right, I mean, it did just address one issue.
I'm sorry?
It did just address one issue.
Yeah, and
I think it's an important issue that lies behind the divide that exists between, the divide of trust, you know, and the questions of credibility. Who are you, you know, what, you know, we need not to hold on to that, that belief that the sale must never go through. We never said that. We said, the petition clearly says, at this time, that we are not prepared.
What we're saying is that the Clayworks is not the building in which Clayworks resides at the moment. They're not synonymous. However, the precipitous sale of the building without the inclusion of the informed inclusion of the community that has been part of it could jeopardize what's supposed to be the underlying purpose of the whole thing. So I just think that
I agree with that. Do you agree with that?
she just has to take back something that's clearer, because we've been part of this conversation for a long time, and so you very succinctly said that, but that's what she's going with, and I don't think it represents what we're.
Right, well, I think you articulated very well.
Don't ask me to repeat myself, I'm no good.
Did you get that?
Usually you tell people not to repeat themselves. Stop repeating
Can you
yourself.
read your points again that you're taking back? Susan, can you read the points again that you're taking back?
The points, well, the first thing was what I just read. We care about saving Clayworks, not about saving a building. We are open-minded. That was the first thing. The second thing was concern about misrepresentation from what Lord Walker said. And what he actually said, which I don't know, but I'm gonna look into it. That changing the board leadership might be something we need to do. So that's another thing. And then specifically Mary Blair, you said you really think. I just wanna tell you, Mary Blair is doing this for free for us. Free.
We don't.
So, and we don't have to. So there's that.
Everybody's working for free.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but usually in EG goes paid.
Right, and then I told you that I'd get back to Nancy Maxwell and find out about the process. Is there anything else?
Getting the nominations, do you have that?
Yeah, no, that's.
In that statement, we're not just about the building, maybe not only the building, and not just the building. You know what I mean?
Well,
That's
yeah,
right.
finding that statement in the way that you, maybe you can just talk afterwards.
Somebody's gonna have to tell me, because I'm taking your concerns back and forth, so I'm not making them up.
Alan, you have something to, do you wanna say something? Anything else?
I guess I do want to say something. I am concerned about what the basic business plan is for Clayworks. You know, and I wonder if somebody shouldn't have we shouldn't have looked at that along the way.
Well, we've asked.
And,
Well,
you know, what is the business plan? I mean, what is the expected revenue for classes? What are the fixed costs? And, you know, what does it need to make it work? I don't know.
so in answer to you, further to the various exchange of emails between myself and Mary Blair, the last that came yesterday, I've drafted an answer, and in my answer, I ask specifically, I put it to my friends here in an image, because my first language is Arabic and it's very flowery. So I say, you basically have led us to the edge of the precipice, and you're saying, jump with me, but I don't know that there's a safety net at the bottom. That's exactly where we stand today. So they come back time and time again and ask, what is our vision? How do we see Clayworks? I'm saying, so that they see if our vision agrees with their vision, and I'm would like to answer Mary by saying, what is your vision? Because we only know you
You're
want to sell,
responsible for it.
but we don't know where you're taking us. How do you expect us to follow you? You haven't come clean on where you want Clayworks today. So that's the answer that I'm, in a form of a question that I'm going to give her.
In a modest effort at fundraising, there's a little bucket here with $5 in it. And we do have, you know, we made a contribution to the church here for the use of this facility, and we have some printing expenses and whatnot. If you could throw a buck or two or $5 in here, it would be most appreciated. And thank you all very much, and look for more by email.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. If people don't mind hanging your chairs up as you go, that would be great. Save us a little work. Stand at the door.
Oh my God, she's going to stand at the door.